Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and this podcast is dedicated to helping families love God and use tech. Today, we are talking about analog adventures for Christmas. And I am excited because, one, I'm passionate about analog adventures, those adventures we have at the pace of real life with real life people that are amazing replacements for unhealthy tech and great supplements for healthy tech that take that excitement from the tech and help us apply it in the real world. So this is an area I'm passionate about, and both as a parent, as a former teacher, and as someone who's doing this work day to day with families, analog adventures can be awesome ways to get wins as a parent, as an activity with your child or for your child, and a great opportunity to, as I mentioned before, extend their passions from the technology that's inspiring them. They love to draw, they love to create, they love great stories, they love adventure, and now you're taking that into the real world at the pace of real life, somewhere where there's no ads tied in. There's no redirection through a link. There's no behavioral design that's encouraging your child to play longer, to watch longer, to engage again when it wasn't your child's choice. So there's 5 areas we're going to be talking about. Christmas is a great Christmas is a great time to look at these 5 areas because we're generally buying gifts anyway. So what can we do for analog adventures for Christmas? We're looking at 5 areas. It's board games, art, I'm going to call it combat. Bear with me. I'll explain it more when we get there. Books, and then STEM and personal tech. So STEM is the science, technology, engineering, math. We're going to look at what could be some areas we could step into that in the practical sense if our child is interested in that for themselves, or we want to see them grow in that area. So starting right off the top, it's board games, because if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you probably know I'm a big fan. But I want to explain why I'm such a big fan of board games. So my little bit of history, I was really unhealthy with my gaming. I gamed for purpose rather than on purpose. I gamed to be okay. So for me, video games are something where I just couldn't turn the dial down. It was all 100% in or nothing. So I had to just nothing and snap off the dial or snap off the switch, excuse me. So that's where I'm at. Board games, though, are an awesome intermediate gaming experience because it's very hard to overplay by yourself. There are some games that are individual solo play stuff, but it's hard to play it too much with one person. You generally need another person. You generally need a rule book, and it is very difficult to get overstimulated. Can you overplay a board game? Sure. You can overdo anything, exercise, sleep. Like, you can do things that are good for you. You can do too much, but they're not generally going to have as many behavioral hooks tied in. And I still have discernment for what games I play. I don't just take them all, but I have found it to be great. When talking about games, I like to remind families that games are like food. There's really 4 things. You need to be willing to try new things. Remember that variety is your friend. You need to leave time for digestion, and it's best enjoyed with other people. And if you take that concept to board games, then it isn't, is this the perfect board game for our family? It's, hey, this is new. Let's try it together. And it's an awesome experience as a family when it clicks and you go, wow, we really enjoyed this. Odd. And you might not even be able to put your finger on, like, what did we just like about that? It's just, I don't know, we had fun. It was like a little mini mind vacation for us. We tried something new. We had a challenge. We didn't have to leave our house. It's here in the Northwest. It rains for the next 9 months. So we're going to get lots of indoor activities. So that's my pitch for board games. And when you go, all right, but how do I pick one from my family? Certainly, I'll give you a couple options by age group here, but, and those will be in the show notes if you want to find the links and go out and just do your shopping that way. Cool. But I made an acronym called ANTIC. And basically that you're going to check your group's ANTIC. That's because you might have a game that works great with you and your adult friends, but it may not work great with you and every one of your children. Or maybe it's good with half your family, but not a great fit for the other half. So you're going to look at age, the number of players, the time you want to play, their interests, and whether they want to be cooperative or competitive. That's ANTIC. And if you look at that, you'll very quickly go, oh, you know what? We need a game that's appropriate for 5-year-olds, that can handle 4 or more people, that can be done in 15 minutes or less, and that's cooperative with an interest in animals, in building, in, I don't know, whatever it might be for you. So that's ANTIC, can be a great way. You go somewhere like BoardGameGeek.com. And Board Game Geek has all of the board games, ranks them, lists them. You can look at them. So if I were to look up something like Monopoly. It'll show, oh, that's a family game. That's also a strategy game. And then you can click on the category and it's like number whatever out of strategy games. So then you can scroll up and be like, what is ranked higher in this particular community's opinion, but is the same category of game. And that has been really helpful for me to find great games for my family, to suggest games for others when they come to me and go, hey, I've got a kid. And I ask the antic questions and they go, all right, this, great. Check out this game or that game. So let's talk about that. My family's antic, we're 5 to 11, 2 to 4 players, under 30 minutes because Hadley, like Owen can handle more, Hadley can't. So we're bringing it down to her. Interest in animals and cooperative. So for us, something like that would, we actually got it from a gift. Labyrinth Pokemon Edition was great. Animal Upon Animal. That's one of my, if you're playing with a little kid, check out the game Animal Upon Animal. It's a little stacking game, little cute animals. Very fun. It's like Jenga, but with animals. And great. Works on and hand-eye coordination and taking turns and failing because at some point your little tower of animals will collapse and you'll feel terrible about it. And that's important. Board games are great because they really don't coddle your feelings well. Like someone is losing and it's frustrating and it's happening in real time. Like it happens so slow that you just kind of sit in those negative emotions. And that is, research shows actually, it's very positive for young people. There's the inhibiting negative behavior, negative emotions, and also processing it. How do you say good job to someone who beat you at the pace of real life? Not just beat you and then went away because the game's over and they're off across the planet. And now you're like just in your own little computer universe dealing with your frustration, but you're dealing with your loss in front of someone. It's good stuff. Anyway. Others for little. So I said Animal Upon Animal. I'll try to keep it to 3 for each of these categories. Richard Scarry's Busy Town Seek and Find is a blast. Busy Town, if you're familiar with the books, what do people do all day? Those kinds of things by Richard Scarry. It's that, but a big long one sits on the floor and it has like you random dice rolling and then you're finding things throughout. You set a little 1-minute timer and you're trying to find all the flower pots, all the ladders, all the whatever it might be. So that's a really fun one. Outfox is one that my olders can play with Hadley. It's like Kids Clue. There's a bunch of chickens looking for the fox. Who stole a pie? By the way, he didn't eat any chickens. So those are all great ones. And then I'm going to give you a bonus one on this one. Zingo for sight words because Hadley is in the midst of learning sight words. Zingo is a bingo style game where you have there's a little machine. It gives you 2 cards at a time and you try to place them on your bingo cards. So that's a fun one. Then if you were to go to, all right, but what about full family? We've really enjoyed a game called Throw Burrito, where it's kind of like the game Spoons, where you flip over cards and then if there's matching ones, you have to grab these burritos and throw them at each other and then you're out. So it's like Spoons mixed with dodgeball. It is fun if you're into that. We like a game called Dixit, Dixit. It's a cooperative storytelling game. So you take turns and you try to give a 1 word or 1 phrase hint, like takes one to know one. And then you all play down a card that you think best fits that. And you're trying to get people to guess your card for that phrase. And that may have been a terrible way to explain it, but you'll see when you look it up. And then we just got this from a friend for Owen's birthday and we have loved it. It's called Splendor. And you are a gem trader and you're trying to gain gems to get the most victory points. Solid one. So if you are playing family game night, Throw Burrito, Dixit, Splendor, all great options. Elementary, middle school. All right. 3. So I ran a board game club for the better part of a decade at a middle school. Dice Throne, there's a Marvel version and then just standard version. It's combat Yahtzee. So you take 1v1, so 2 players. You can also do 2v2, so you can have 4-person teams, or 2-person teams, 4 people playing. But you play Yahtzee, but you have a little character card, and it's like, oh, a straight actually does this, a mega uppercut ability. So it's kind of like, if any of you remember old school video games, Street Fighter, it's like that. You're battling each other, and then you get your points down to 0, and somebody wins. The Marvel version is just the exact same game, but just with Thor and Hulk and things like that. Carcassonne is a cooperative puzzle game, so this is great for your middle schoolers who don't want to be doing combat. A great game. Very nicely paced, so everyone has something to do, but not overwhelming. And then third and finally, Wingspan, which is you're building a bird sanctuary, which it isn't a pitch in and of itself, but the artwork is gorgeous. The bird facts are fun. And I have played with children in lower elementary all the way up to grandparent age, and it's an awesome game for a wide range. I will say for middle schoolers specifically, there's a game called Super Fight. If you have a kid who loves to argue, who loves a little debate, and loves just general silliness, Super Fight is you build your own little super creature, not always superhero, but you flip 2 cards and it's like a gummy bear that's 100 feet tall. And then you have to go around the circle. You pair up and be like, in a battle, who would win? And it might be like Elvis on a motorcycle with a chainsaw. Like, you're just very silly and you have to argue. And then the group votes based on the argument. So there you go. Your middle schooler can have a space to get out some of that angst. And then if you are like, all right, we want to play games, but we need something more intense, I'll just say 2. We have really loved Battletech. It's a 1980s game where you're little stompy mechs and you punch and kick each other because that's a hoot. And so you get the combat feel, but it's not about killing people. It's about wrecking their mech. So the pilot can eject and then everyone moves on with their day. But you don't have your little Robo Knight. So that's fun. And then Star Wars Legion or Star Wars Shatterpoint. They're not the cheapest games, but if your kid loves detail and rules like one of mine does, we've owned them both. We've enjoyed them. I have to have the rules explained to me. I have to watch YouTube videos because I'm like, wow, you officially have surpassed my ability to retain rules. But you know it. If you've got one of those kids who are like, we need something more intense, and also we want to assemble and paint our own pieces, boom, do it. Both those, Battletech and Legion/Shatterpoint. All right, so those are games. I could talk a whole episode on that, but I won't. Because art is another analog adventure. This is a nice low barrier for entry. We can do it together. We can do it independent. A free resource just to start you off is Art for Kids Hub. I had to just read it because I was like, what order? Art for Kids Hub. It's on YouTube. You can also subscribe if you don't want to have to deal with any of the ads, but they've got stuff that Hadley can draw at 5, that Henry has really gotten into this, so we can set up a laptop, set a timer, and he can do 2 or 3 lessons because they're anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, depending how intense they are. And then from that, you can get them like the cool art supplies for Christmas to go with it. So markers, I'll in the link, but you can get a set of 72 for $30. And they're nice. They're chisel tip on one side, they're fine tip on the other. Like, you can get a cool set. You can get those Crayola art sets where they have the markers and the crayons and the colored pencils all in one big box. Each of our kids have got those the last 2 Christmases, and like, they're still working. They were using them this last week. They've been now making art stuff and then mailing them to friends because we're like, you can't just hang up more stuff in our house. We have 15 drawings from each of you. Let's do it. But that is an amazing way to engage what your kid is passionate about. They really want to talk about X game or play Y adventure. Great. Now you get to draw that adventure to whatever ability you have and make your own stories and really be engaging with that. And sometimes cool art supplies help with that. And then I had mentioned before those games that you paint your own units. I'll include some Vallejo paints as a link, but painting your own miniatures is very humbling and a lot of fun. It could be cars, it could be mechs, it could be characters. But then you can take characters from some, and my boys will take the characters they have from all these little games and then make their own stories with them. So they'll build magnetile buildings and they'll put in units and then they'll tell themselves what's happening. They'll recreate stories they already know. Owen was on a whole tear with the book Green Ember and was recreating battle scenes using these miniatures that he's painted himself. So there's a lot of extending what we already have, so we're not having to just buy new stuff. And paint can help you do that. So that'll be on there. Third thing then, so if we have board games, we have art, combat. And this is, I mean combat, but it's all simulated. There is something about a good solid game of tag where you are competing and getting people out. Kids enjoy that a lot. We just carried that into the area of foam weaponry. So now we're Nerf. Some families are uncomfortable with this, and I understand, but Nerf, I include the link. Owen got one for his birthday, and it like reignited this fire in our kids. And we had a big Nerf gun battle inside, which was a hoot. Nerf, it's tag with little Nerf blasters. You can get in inexpensive. I include 3 links, and it's anywhere from like $9 to $15. You don't have to break the bank. We don't own any of the battery-powered ones right now. I think we had them and they broke and we just never replaced them. The little spring-loaded ones where you just pull it back every time works great. And it's still a lot of fun and kids really like that. So you go from Nerf to medieval combat where there's swords and spears that are foam that you tag each other with. I'll give you the link. The company they're out Midwest that sells this stuff has been so busy. They haven't been able to fulfill orders, but I want to say it's Foam Forge is the name of the company. And it's literally like two dudes who just put the stuff together and sell it at conferences and random people that buy it in Western Washington. But that is an amazing, we call it Tag with Swords. And it's been like an ongoing tradition now where we do it for Owen's birthday every year for the last like 4 or 5 years. That's a hoot. So Nerf, Tag with Swords, and then something like Airsoft. If your family's into Nerf, the next step up, I strongly recommend, would be using these little plastic BBs. They call it Airsoft. It is not appropriate inside. You would need to do it outside. It's not appropriate in a neighborhood because the guns can look like replicas. Again, check your comfort with that. But you can get in for $30. If you buy a little pump shotgun, we did this with Young Life events, and it's tag in the woods, it's tag in whatever field you may find. You can go fancier, but it's a lot less expensive than paintball. If you've ever been paintballing and you dropped $80 for a day of paintball, that was basically half of owning your own airsoft kit. So just double check that. And I'll include like the eye protection if you want to get one that has a battery, like that stuff on there. So we have board games, art, combat, because sometimes tag just needs to have swords. Books. Reading is oh so important and valuable. I'm going to include the links for 2 great resources, Honey for a Child's Heart and Read Aloud Family. Both of these resources give you books to read through, lists of books to pick from for your family. As I went through, I was like, all right, what have my children loved though? So here are some of the Sutherland favorites. For 5 and under, Winnie the Pooh has been a win on all ages. Hadley is currently going through it. Just the Winnie the Pooh classic story set. The Baby Lit books, so Pride and Prejudice, Little Women, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe have really pretty art. And then actually good summaries of the story that still feel like you're reading a story, not you're just reading about the story. I don't know if you've ever read summary stories where you're like, this actually is terrible because it's really uninteresting. And then the Jesus Storybook Bible by Sally Lloyd Jones as just a beautiful, again, paraphrasing of the Bible. It is not scripture, but in terms of trying to grasp the concepts of scripture, it does a really nice job. It feels like a really cool aunt or uncle is telling you the tale of the Bible in their own words. And she does a really nice job of making that accessible and making it something that youngers can begin to wrap their brain around the idea of God's love and our need and grace. And then when you read the real Bible, they have reference points. So I am a fan of that. And I've really enjoyed that. With elementary school kids, any of the Roald Dahl books that are like the classics, Matilda, James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, we like those. I've said this before, though, that we allow a higher level of kind of snarky humor. And Roald Dahl's his characters are not the most respectful. So make sure you've at least established some boundaries for your family. The Wild Robot just came out as a major feature film. The kids said they enjoyed it a lot. But The Wild Robot is a delightful story of a robot that gets shipwrecked on an island and has to befriend all these animals, and like watching Roz, the robot, try to like figure out how that works, and very literal about everything. And then I'm going to cheat on this, but give you The Hobbit. And with The Hobbit being like great little adventure stories, Green Ember, which I'd mentioned, Redwall, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, Wingfeather Saga. These are all amazing little series that teach friendship and teach integrity and teach character and teach bravery and sacrifice and like very biblical concepts, even when they're not citing Bible verses. So that would be for elementary school reading. Ooh, and for the bonus one on the elementary reading, the Who Was series. It's Who Was, and then their little short biographies on famous people and influential individuals are a great read and a way to put our toe into some of the nonfiction reading. Fiction reading is great for so many things and can be so valuable all the way into adulthood, and get into some nonfiction. It's going to be important for all of us. As someone who very much prefers fictional reading, I would say that's a good series to start with. Junior high reading. As a junior high teacher, these were books that my students loved and that I would let my kids read. So there's some books that were always really interesting. The kids read every year that I'd be like, oh, I would not encourage my child to read that one. And I didn't encourage my students. So I'm not just going off popular. But Ender's Game is a sci-fi book that with a wonderful twist ending, a lot of fun. The Outsiders is an under junior high level, but high interest that I would strongly encourage anyone to check out. It's basically, how would you put it? It's like the 1950s, like rough kids versus the preppy kids and like processing the journey of adolescence and life choices. City of Ember, which is a sci-fi about like the world has gone through some kind of cataclysm and they're all living underground trying to find their way out. Wrinkle in Time is a Narnia-esque, like there's another magical universe that is expressing the beauty of God's creation in parallel to ours. And this girl's trying to find her father in the journey. The Giver, another great book talking about what would you give up to have a perfect society. And then one young man named Jonas's journey to figure out, is it worth it? And another one with like an ending that I liked because it's often the first time a kid had an adverse reaction to the end of a book, like real frustration and being like, yeah, but like the fact that you cared, like that's what we're focusing about here. And if you haven't read The Giver, go ahead and give it a quick read. You can probably read it in a day. And then Artemis Fowl. So it's the only of the books that has a kind of an anti-hero-esque. It's more of Gru from Despicable Me, if you're familiar with it. So he basically is like the son of a supervillain and is trying to figure out what happened to his parents and like tries to be bad, but keeps saving the planet on accident sort of thing. So that's Artemis Fowl, junior high books. High school, I went with Anna on this and she was like, just pick your own books because we have very different tastes. So here's Nathan's selection. A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I wish I'd read this one earlier in life. So good. Both for just like the British take on a French thing, which French, I'm sorry, but it is funny that a British dude is just like taking every shot he can to enjoy the difference between the two cities. But the French Revolution is basically the premise. And fascinating because historically so different from what America's Revolution was like in just a snippet of like everyone who started the French Revolution died in it. And not just like from fighting wars, but like from the followers. They basically fomented a revolution that was based a lot more on vibes and anarchy than was like on we have a goal. So just like a lot more. Anyway, it was very interesting to read. And then if you go read the history on it, it inspired me on both those. Amusing Ourselves to Death, a book everyone should read by Neil Postman, written in the 1980s, but so prescient on where tech was going. Anna's suggestion, actually, I forgot she did give one. It is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. So solid read in terms of what does it look like? And talking to your kid about like, hey, should we just leverage good ideas to make people like us? Like, no. But if there are ways people receive information, reading about that and learning that before we have to experience it ourselves, like he does have a lot of wisdom in terms of, I mean, just straight proverbial wisdom. Like this is how people like to be treated, even when they're the bad ones. Like they still react these ways. Like how can we use that in a kingdom-minded format to understand like this is how God wired people to work. This is also what Proverbs literally says about people. Like what can we do? I mean, simple things like people like their own name. Like, so learn someone's name. It matters to them. Therefore, it can matter to you. And we can tie that in with the gospel. It doesn't have to be as negative as the title sounds. How to Win Friends, Influence People. It sounds very magic-y. I would say Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, if you only get to read one. It's useful in a fantastical context, but also it's a great read, well-written, good, fun, fictional history piece. And then I'm going with Agatha Christie, murder mystery, one of the most published authors of all time. And her, for murder mystery, Murder on the Orient Express, Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and Death on the Nile. They're just really well done as fictional mystery pieces. If you're into that, if you have an older kid who can handle some of the content, they're not grotesque in their violence, but they're still murder mysteries. So people die. Check that one out. But Agatha Christie. So those are, if you got high schoolers, and again, those top two books that I referenced, The Honey for a Child's Heart has lists of books by age that are great. And we've regularly picked books off those lists. And then the Read Aloud Family. Sarah McKenzie, I want to say, is the author on that one. And then, all right, we're down to the last piece, personal tech and STEM ideas. So in this is you're looking for Christmas gifts, you're looking for something. We split into something you want, something you need, something to wear, and something to read are like the 4 categories our kids can expect a gift in. Doesn't mean they're fancy, doesn't mean they're world stopping. We're not spending hundreds of dollars in each of those categories, but you will get something. You will get a book for Christmas. You will get an activity, something that you want to have, and then something you need. In the personal tech side, I broke it down to STEM and personal tech because some kids aren't ready for personal tech. But if your child is, a Gab phone, a Bark phone, those are, if your kid is ready for a smartphone experience, the Bark phone is the one that you can start as a dumb phone and then level up. A Gab phone is, your kid's not ready, not 15 yet, has not asked for one. Gab phone will allow basic GPS, basic communication via text, but can't send or receive images, doesn't have an app store, doesn't have a browser, like those simple tech things. The Yoto player, YOTO, is a nice way to, when people want the function of an Echo Dot, like my kid likes to listen to music, likes to listen to stories. The Yoto player can do that. There's these little cartridges you put in it and it plays just that information. So it's not the entirety of the internet. You're not relying on AI to give your child good information, because my children definitely think it'd be funny to ask for something silly like, hey Siri, play Booty. And turns out there's music that will show up, and you can have parental controls, but again, they're not perfect. What makes it completely controlled is get it offline. And Yoto is one example. We use an old speaker that we just run like Audible through, but this gives your child a little more agency. There's little gifts you can buy. Then it's not cheap. The little discs are not cheap, but it's a cool option. A lot of people's children love having that function of like, I picked my music and like, this is my thing. So you can do that if you would like. In terms of the STEM side, so for using tech to grow, Scratch is a programming, and it'll be in the link, but it's scratch.mit.edu. And it's a programming coding program. How would I say that? But it's a great programming introduction. And so my 2 boys are doing it right now. They're doing it for fun. They watch a guy named Griff Patch off YouTube. And so Henry's doing how to build a platformer, side-scrolling video game, and Owen's how to build an RPG world, basically using a lookalike of Zelda: Link to the Past. And so they don't play video games right now, but they are building their games. And it's like building a video game with Legos, if you will, in that when you get 10 minutes in, if you've made a mistake, your only option is start all the way over or go back through the code line by line and figure out where your mistake was. Did you enter a number wrong? Is it in the wrong order? Is it set to the wrong setting? And like just your child understanding like this is how games are made on the back end. Like let's learn that is very cool. And so that's a direction that we've chosen to go, inspired by our cousin / my nephew, Remington, doing a lot of coding and watching his growth in that. It's been really cool. So Scratch is a great option. Bricklink Studio is like AutoCAD for Legos. You can build a unit, it'll stress test it to see if it'll stand, and then you can source all of the pieces and have them shipped to you with an AI-generated instruction manual. So you could build yourself that castle or that Christmas house or whatever it is from your own personal pieces. And it is full-blown CAD. The one suggestion I'd say is please use an external mouse. Don't use the pad on your laptop. It won't work well. It's too integral of a process of placing your individual Lego blocks. And then the third and final one is Typing Club. Typingclub.com is a way to learn typing. It feels like a game because there's little gamey pieces. It tracks how many words per minute, how accurate you were. It starts with 2 and 3 letter combos and then gets you to the top row, home row, bottom row, numbers. And there's your little ninja that's jumping across balloons and throwing rocks at a Yeti. But it is, while it's video game-ish and there's some drool tech in there, typing is so important. So if you want to give your child access, say, hey, we're going to start integrating, like one of your gifts is we're adding computer time. If you're someone who's not installed or introduced any computer time, these are 3 very reasonable, very intentional ways to introduce technology for your child in fun ways. And then the 4th one would be Khan Academy, Khan Academy. Use it for math. So good in terms of giving your child some STEM exposure and the opportunity to excel at mathematics beyond what they might be able to get in a classroom time, or if you're homeschooled, a delightful way to get high-level math in, both on the way it's introduced. It's done in a really tool techy way that there's not a lot of distraction around it. And then if you ever get stuck, the YouTube lessons that are linked, like little 2 to 4 minute lessons that will introduce the math and walk you through it, are phenomenal. Its ability to track your success, to show you where you are in your growth, and to show you where you still need some practice is amazing, because then it's not like, oh, you couldn't do that math, so we won't let you do anything else. Like, nope, go ahead and skip that and move on with the rest of this math, because that's coming back. And we can always tell, hey, that was an area we struggled. We need to go back and practice that again, or we need to practice it in these other ways. So I love the way Khan Academy has progressed. And right now it's still very focused on learning, not on retention and engagement. So then that brings us to analog toys in the STEM department. So Duplos, Legos, Magna-Tiles. There's an off-brand Magna-Tiles. I'll link to those as well, because Magna-Tiles are like $115 for 100 of them. Find them used, because they're almost bulletproof. So if you find a family whose kids have just grown out of them, buy them used at a yard sale or through OfferUp or wherever you can get it. But they are phenomenal because, as I mentioned earlier, they tie in so well with other creative play. They work well with Barbies. They work well with Legos. They work well with little miniatures from your board games. Magna-Tiles are just a great way to make 3D structures that are accessible and fun. We just have a bin of them. We asked for them for 3 straight Christmases. We got them to the point, that was how many we needed to be able to have 3 kids play at the same time. And it's been great. And 11, 9, and 5, they're still fun. They're still out. So that's our family. But there are off-brand ones that you can get as well. The only complaint I've seen is that the magnets don't, like, sometimes just the weight of the structure makes it collapse. And Magna-Tiles, that's not as common. But wooden trains and snap circuits. Snap circuits are just a way to practice a little bit of that. Like, hey, it has to finish a circuit in order to actually get the electrical current all the way through. And they're as small as like 50 pieces to hundreds and hundreds with lots of quirks. So those are the 5 areas for analog adventure Christmas gifts. We can look at board games, art, combat, books, and STEM / well, I guess personal tech. But there are more things we could say, but I wanted to give you just a little snippet on each, on why these matter. And at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're giving your child an opportunity to use the skills God has given him or her, to experience stress and trials of building things and thinking of things and having them fail and break and not work, and then to grow in the gifts and interests in an analog theater in a way that isn't overstimulated or completely directive the entire time. Obviously, there's some tech there at the end we talked about that is somewhat directive, but that's important and valuable to recognize our limits, to recognize, hey, I've noticed this, you seem to get really frustrated, really overwhelmed. What do we need to do with that? Those are all talking points for us. So I hope this is encouraging. I hope you'll check out the links in the show notes, because that's where the real bread and butter of this conversation is. So you can go through and see what you might like, what you might be able to go search something that's like it, that would be a better fit for your family. And I would love to hear what you've used in the Analog Adventure Forum that works well for you, and what specific technologies and ideas I didn't mention that you would love to either add to or suggest that works for your family. You can reach out to me, Nathan at gospeltech.net, or on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Love God Use Tech. And would you join us next week as we continue this conversation about how we can love God and use tech?